Well, hello there. I'm Phil Harding from Wessex Archaeology and from Waterloo Uncovered. And of course, now we're into this virus situation. We can't go and dig this year. So Waterloo Uncovered have asked me to present to you about 4 or 5 different little videos telling you about what we've been up to at Waterloo Uncovered and then what else I get up to in my normal daily life. I hope you're going to enjoy these things because I think they're quite good actually, but I would do, wouldn't I, really? For the past 4 years I've been very lucky. I've been digging just inside the north gate at Hougoumont farm. Now, for those of you who don't know, the north gate at Hougoumont farm is a pivotal point in the Battle of Waterloo. Hougoumont farm was defended by Wellington. It formed the right flank of his army. It was a forward position. And famously, the French broke through the north gate. They were repulsed by the Coldstream Guards, who made it to the gates and slammed the gates shut in the French, preventing them getting back in. Wellington was so impressed by this action that he acknowledged that it was one of the pivotal points of the Battle of Waterloo. So what can we actually learn from the archaeology? What do we know about the archaeology of the North Gate at Hougoumont farm? Well, to be bluntly honest, not very much. We know, for example, that there was a massive barn immediately to the east of the gate. And we know more or less how big it was simply because of a survey that was done after the battle that showed that it was about 9 meters wide. We also know that during the battle the French lobbed in incendiary shells and the barn caught fire and it burnt down. And we know that after the battle the ruins were bulldozed in and cleared off the site. But are there any remains of the barn remaining? And are there any traces of the battle itself? And more importantly, any traces of the people who actually fought in the battle? So, in archaeology, it always pays to work from a known to an unknown. So, we knew, or we thought we knew, that the barn was 9 meters wide. So we put in a narrow trench to cover 9 meters. And we found a brick wall. It was the south wall of the barn. Victory! Buoyed up with success, the following year we went back and we swung the trench through 90 degrees to try and pick up the west gable end. Now, you'd expect that the gable end on the west side would eventually intersect with the south wall to form the corner of the barn. Wrong. Archaeology is a funny old thing. I mean, sometimes you can kind of meander around, battering your head against a brick wall, looking for evidence, and then all of a sudden, a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, all the bits come together at once. And that's what's happened this morning, because all of a sudden we realised what we had found here and the importance of it. The survey was wrong. It turned out that the barn is not 9 meters wide, but 13 meters wide. And that means that the corner was much, much further into the farmyard than we'd expected. It meant that it narrowed down the pinch point between the corner of our barn and a major barn on the western side. It meant that there was a much tighter pinch point for the French to get through into the farmyard. It was a real killing zone. So, once we'd actually established the full dimensions of the barn, we wanted to then actually have a look and see what was going on inside the barn, the floor levels. Were there any floor levels, and were there any traces of the battle inside the ruins? So over the next 3 years we started opening up an area inside the barn. Now, with archaeology you have to deal with layers. It's a very simple process. The oldest layer is at the bottom and the newest one is at the top. So what we did when we came down was, the first layer we came to was brick rubble. We thought that this was where the walls of the barn had been smashed down after the battle and cleared away. This was the remnants of the walls of the barn. And then as we cleared away the brick rubble, underneath that, we found some roof slates. Ah, there we have it. The roof has collapsed as it's burnt down, and it's forming the basal layer of our deposits. And there was charcoal there. It proved that the barn had been burnt down. But there was always something nagging at the back of my mind. There was something that was very seriously missing with that storyline. Where was the dirt? Because I've worked around on farms and I know farms are not clean. And when we stripped away the slates, we went straight down onto really clean sand. Something was missing. Something that was missing was the floor. And it pondered and I pondered and I pondered about this. I could find no traces of the floor. There must have been a floor. You can't have a clean farmyard. And it was only in the last year that we were there that I was able to resolve that, because as we got further and further into the inside of the barn, we found fragments of broken stone. These were stones, cobblestones, that had been ripped up to use somewhere else. These were cobblestones that had got broken and had been rejected. These were the long lost traces of my floor that I'd spent so much time anguishing about. So, what were we able to do about the storyline? We've got a barn. We now know that it's 13 metres wide. It was the barn that was garrisoned by the British troops. It was the barn that caught fire. We can confirm that it caught fire. We got traces of charcoal. We know that the barn was roofed with slate. That in itself was a new discovery. All the previous thoughts were that it was actually roofed with ceramic clay tiles, but now we had bucket loads and bucket loads of slates. We had loads and loads of slate nails as well to fit the roof on. These were this was the roof that the soldiers would have punched holes through to get loopholes to fire at the advancing French. So we have a barn with a slate roof. It catches fire and the roof falls in. After the battle, the soldiers, the garrison, must have cleaned up the site. They would have removed the dead and buried them respectfully. Then after that, the site becomes something of a tourist attraction. And then they decide, got to clean the whole thing away. And so what happens then, the first thing they say is, ooh, that's a nice floor. We'll have that. So the first thing they have to do is sweep away all the remains of the slates to lift up the cobblestones so they can use them somewhere else. And as they remove those cobblestones, the slates are repositioned. They then become the lowest level in our layers. And then, once they've taken away all the usable stone and they've redeposited and reworked all the slates, they then knock down the walls. And that gives us our storyline of the series of events. But there's one other thing that I haven't mentioned. The people who fought in that barn and possibly died in that barn. Do we have any traces of those? Funnily enough, we do. In one corner of our trench, we had a distinct cluster of army buttons, British army buttons. I'll tell you about those some other time.